Hello, welcome to Laguna Art Museum's annual art auction. I'm Malcolm Warner, the Executive Director of the museum, and I'll be walking us through a few of the star lots in the auction in a moment. Let me say something generally about auctions, though. It's very important for us to, as a fundraising device, a lot of art museums do this. We have two purposes, really. We need to raise money, and every bid you make counts towards the support of our exhibitions and education programs. But the more sort of future-oriented motive of these auctions is to foster collecting in our community, because we benefit from that. Obviously, the museum depends to enrich its permanent collection on future donations of artwork. So what we hope, just to let you into a secret, is that anything that you buy in the auction, and it's all museum quality, we curate it carefully, will one day maybe come back as a donation to the museum. It would be remiss of me not to thank the kind platinum sponsors who have made this, this production possible. Lou and Laura Roll, Ellie Weaver and Hilton Weinberg, and Kristen and Steve Samuelin, and Joe and Jane Hanauer and Laguna Beach Books. So let's have a look at some of the star lots in the auction. This is the kind of painting that really led us to call our annual art auction California Cool. You don't get much cooler than this young woman in her swimsuit looking to the horizon. The painting is called Horizons, with her binoculars. We love it. It's the signature piece of the show, really. We're using it in all our publicity. And indeed, the artist, Tracy Sylvester Harris, painted it specifically for the art auction. It seems to capture the time to us, you know, the times that we're living in. 2021 being, hopefully, a happier year than 2020, and this the sort of feeling of optimism about this young woman looking into the distance, as if looking into a happier future. Tracy Sylvester Harris has a lot of claims to fame. She's a terrific artist, and I've been reminded of her constantly recently because I'm in the habit of watching this the news hour on public television every night at 6 o'clock, and I don't know if you've seen the reports of this journalist called Lisa Desjardins. If you look closely in the background, every time, you know, she's making her report via Zoom, like we're all used to doing now. In the background, in her basement or wherever she is, she has a painting by Tracy Sylvester Harris. How about that? This painting is by Peter Krasnow. He was a Russian emigre who came to Los Angeles in the 1920s, and he was part of this pioneering sort of social set of young artists, including Edward Weston, the great photographer, for example, and they pioneered modern art in early 20th century Southern California. This work, though, is from a bit later on. It's from the 1960s. You can see on the back it's dated 1965 with K1. That's the way he numbered his works. So this shows K for Krasnow, number 1. This was the first painting he did in that year, 1965. But doesn't it look like it was painted yesterday? It's so vivid and fresh. It's like a young artist of today might produce. It's full of these kind of symbolic looking motifs. It looks like there might be some hidden religious or spiritual meaning behind a lot of them, but it's not very specific. And I think that was typical of Krasnow's work. It gives a kind of sense of that there's a hidden meaning there that you can speculate about as it involves you in its imagery. Anyway, this is a piece that really brings out the covetousness in me. I'd love to add this to my collection, and I'll probably be bidding on it myself. This painting is called Barn Swallow and California Poppy. It's by an LA artist called Don Suggs, recently deceased, sadly enough. And it was kindly donated to the auction by LA Louver, one of the best galleries in LA, in Venice Beach actually. Don Suggs was a regular with that gallery. Some of you may have seen exhibitions of his work there over the years. And this kind of target-like motif was very characteristic of his work. Who knows what the title means? Barn swallow and California poppy, but I can speculate a little bit, because often what Suggs did was to take a subject and kind of extrapolate the color, or as if separating it out in a kind of centrifuge process. So somewhere behind this work, there is maybe a barn swallow and a California poppy, but in the process of abstracting from them, abstract means to take out. He's taken out the colors and separated them out into these concentric circles that make for a very striking design. So Don Suggs, one of our favorite artists, we have a great work by him in our collection at Laguna Art Museum, and I think this would be a creditable addition to anyone's collection. Well, at Laguna Art Museum, we're really into the connections between art and nature. We love the work of any artist who's inspired by nature. And Gwyn Murrell is one of the leading exponents of animal sculpture working today. We loved her work so much that we did a whole exhibition of it a couple of years ago that you may remember in the lower level. Gwyn remains a good friend to the museum. We're so grateful to all these artists who give of their work to support the museum. And in this case, it's a tiger. It's really heavy. This is a solid bronze cast piece of work, and it typifies Gwyn Murrell's style in that it's kind of somewhat abstracted. There's a long tradition of sculpture representing animals, goes way back to the 19th century, but it tends to be very specific and detailed, almost like zoological or something. Gwyn Murrell is a modern artist, so she tends to play down the detail and just try to capture the essential lines of a beautiful animal's body. And she is a very eminent artist and very acclaimed in this particular area of animal sculpture, and it's a fantastic example of her work. You're really seeing behind the scenes here. This is the Steel Gallery, the most historic room in the museum, built by the early artists of Laguna Beach in the 1920s. And we use it as the main room for our auction normally. Of course, it's virtual this year, but we are going to hang the pieces anyway. They're displayed right now, just leaning against the wall in this casual fashion. This is the way we do it. We play with the arrangement in this form before we install it on the walls. And probably the biggest piece in the show is this one behind me. It's by Ken Oster, and it's called The Final Blow. Oster was a Laguna Beach painter. His most original and his best work was this type of subject. He loved these kind of sociable barroom, cafe kind of interiors. There were a couple of favorite places in San Francisco and New York that were inspiration to him. In this case, he's treated us to a picture within the picture. You get twice the value in a way in this work, because in the background behind the barman is Oster's, I must say, rather brilliant recreation of a painting by George Bellows, the early 20th century American painter of the so-called Ashcan school. It's called Stag at Sharky's, and it's obviously a boxing match. The stag bit, I think, is because they look like rotting stags, you know, the boxers. Anyway, the original painting, now in the Cleveland Art Museum, depicted a scene in a private athletic club. So it is a clubman's painting kind of thing, so it's very appropriate that Oster imported it into his work. Ken Oster was a master of kind of loose, free, expressionistic brushwork. You know, he's the kind of artist where if you look really close up, it's just a mass of blobs and brushstrokes, but you stand back and it all makes sense. And that's why he admired George Bellows, because he was one of the great predecessors in that kind of approach to painting. The brushwork takes on a life of its own, really. So in another sense, you get two paintings in one, because close up, some of the elements of this work, if you take this rectangle here containing all these glasses, it's almost like a really great piece of abstract painting. But again, when you stand back, it all makes sense as a realistic scene. Cheryl Eckstrom was probably the most important sculptor ever to have worked here in Laguna Beach. She had a lot of strings to her bow. She had a line of subject matter that was really kind of semi-mythological, with warriors and Viking-like ships. But she also had a great taste for mid-century modern furniture, which comes through in a piece like this. It's a trompe-l'oeil. You know, that's a term that you might have heard in connection with a painting. You know, these amazing still life paintings where they're so realistic that you feel like you could reach in and touch the apple or whatever in the painting. That's trompe-l'oeil, fool the eye. Cheryl had the brilliant and very original idea of doing trompe-l'oeil sculpture. This is such an immaculate reproduction of a certain type of Danish designed chair. It's called a swan chair, very classic piece of mid-century modern design. But it's so immaculately realized by her that you don't realize at first that it's actually made out of metal. It's what was soft and designed for comfort and sitting becomes hard in a strange sort of metamorphosis. For me, the essence of modern sculpture is actually that concept of metamorphosis. One thing becomes another. What you expect is not necessarily what you get. And Cheryl was a very intelligent as well as very technically gifted artist. And this is really one of her most original and most sought after types of work. Well, thanks for joining me for this sneak preview of our art auction. I would emphasize that there's a lot more than what we looked at just in this brief video. I mean, I could go on and on. Please check out the Artsy website for our auction and bid early and often. Bear in mind that every bid you make, even if you don't get the piece in the end, helps us, because it eggs people on to outbid you and gets us a higher price, which helps to support our exhibitions and our education programs.